In this week's Top Gear, what goes on at TT time on the Isle of Man? The pleasures and pains of a classic Stag. And does the Alfa legend live on in the new 155?
This is the first time Top Gear's been teamed up with this sort of horsepower. There's only one place in the British Isles where you'll find a contraption like this, the famous horse tram in Douglas, Isle of Man. It started running in 1876, and would you believe that the original coaches are still operating? The horses are a bit newer though, and Douglas Corporation have 42 of them in their stables. The drivers need a special licence issued by the local council, but they don't need a driving licence. We're not here to conduct a survey on horse trams though, we're here for one of the world's most famous motorcycling events, the TT races. More of that later.
Of all the cars I drove as a motoring journalist in the 1980s, the Alfa Romeo GTV6 was one of the worst. It was deeply uncomfortable. If there was a second gear, I never found it. It was ferociously expensive to run, and though it was a hatchback, the rear seats didn't fold down. I bought one, and there are 3 reasons why I'm not completely certifiable. 1, I think it's a very pretty car. 2, it has a glorious engine. And 3, and perhaps most important of all, Alfa Romeos are somehow special. Let me tell you a few things about the company. It's one of the oldest car firms in the world. It was formed in 1910. Enzo Ferrari began his career with Alfa Romeo before leaving to set up his own, perhaps more successful operation. In the 30s and particularly the 50s, Alfa was a very dominant force in motor racing. So much so in the 50s, in one Grand Prix, their car had such a commanding lead that the driver pulled into the pits on the penultimate lap and had it polished so that it would look smart when he crossed the finishing line. In the 60s, Alfa was all about glamour. Dustin Hoffman, The Graduate, and so on. But then in the 70s, it was nationalised, and we in Britain know all about what happens when you do that to a car industry. Now, a couple of years ago, Fiat brought Alfa back into the private sector and made it their #1 priority to get Alfa Romeo racing again. The Italian Touring Car Championship was won this year by one of these, a 155 Cloverleaf 4. Now, I'll admit it looks just like any other 155, a sensible 4-door saloon that looks like it's been styled by someone with a fondness for origami. But beneath the angular lines of this particular model beats a very Latin, very lovable heart. Although it looks like the sort of car your old geography teacher would drive, it is basically a Lancia Delta Integrale in drag. And the Integrale has won the World Rally Championship 6 times. So, what we have here, trundling round the streets of Birmingham, is a fire-spitting monster in a city suit. Like the Escort Cosworth, the Cloverleaf 4 has a 16-valve turbocharged 2-litre motor and 4-wheel drive. But it isn't exactly what you'd call a stripped-out racer. The interior exudes what the Germans call quality, with all the control surfaces, the steering wheel and the gear lever coated in leather. Everything moves about electrically, there's air conditioning, a CD player, and for when you get bored with trying to get everywhere before you set off, adjustable suspension. You choose how comfortable the ride home should be. The simple fact of the matter is that you're choosing between quite comfortable and really very comfortable indeed. Not a bad achievement, considering those low-profile tyres. But of course it was built primarily to go racing, and that means it has to be as nimble as a nimble thing.
Neon lights flashing by, electric lamp is in line. The
completely ham-fisted buffoon like me at the wheel, the 155 is always good fun. The power steering works well, the grip is outstanding, the turn-in is sharp, and if you get a bit carried away, easy when you have 190 horsepower and a private environment like this to play with, anti-lock brakes are there to help out. Driving the Cloverleaf 4 is like taking a spaniel puppy for a walk. It's forever straining at the leash, urging you to go that little bit faster. It's a hoot, it's a laugh, it reminds you what it was that got you interested in cars in the first place. This is everything the Toyota Corolla isn't. If you could liken all cars to school children, which of course you can't, but I'm going to anyway, this would be the one at the back, flicking paper darts at the teacher. Despite it all, though, the Cloverleaf 4 is probably not everyone's cup of tea. In fact, at £19,000, it definitely isn't everyone's cup of tea. But for those who are fed up to the back teeth with tedious Eurobox yawnmobiles, this is a breath of fresh air, a tonic, a shot of pure adrenaline. You may like your Ford, but you can love your Alfa. However, all is not sweetness and light. Unlike the other, cheaper 155s, the Cloverleaf 4 is only available with its steering wheel on the left-hand side. And this can be a nuisance at toll gates or car park checkouts, or even drive-through fast food joints. Yeah, can I have a huge Mac and some even huger fries, please?
Would you like any drinks?
No, just a Coke, thanks.
McDonald's can't let you that large.
Yeah, large.
Would you like any apple pies?
No, nothing else. The way round the problem, if you can ever get the talking litter bin to shut up, is to think laterally.
Please excuse me if I don't quite understand. I'm just a strange electric lady.
This tiny French car is set to be unveiled at the Guernsey Motor Show later in the month, and the importers hope it'll become a common sight on the island's roads. Called the Agora, the makers say it's France's first production electric car. It certainly must rank as one of the world's smallest cars. The Agora's claim top speed is 50 miles an hour, and the maximum range, 62 miles. The cost, about £6,800, and batteries are included.
Just what is it about the Triumph Stag? Why does it capture people's imaginations so? In a recent Classic Car magazine survey, the Stag won top slot in the list of readers' most desirable cars. In the old car boom of the 80s, prices for mint examples rose as high as £25,000. Even car thieves love it. The Stag enjoys the dubious accolade of Britain's most stolen classic car. Clearly, to some people, the Stag is the best thing since Marilyn Monroe bath mats. A swish four-seater convertible, a classic in which to cruise. But the Stag wasn't always the peppermint cream of classic cars. Launched back in 1970, its development was plagued by strikes. A British Leyland takeover of Triumph didn't help, and appalling quality control did the rest. By 1973, the Americans, a huge and very important market for the Stag, were so sick of their cars overheating that Triumph pulled out of the American market altogether. Back home, things weren't much better, and it soon became clear that the Stag was not going to be one of Triumph's triumphs. There were other horror stories circulating of slipping timing chains and crankshaft failure. In 1975, a test car loaned to the influential car magazine Motor publicly disgraced itself by blowing its engine to bits with fairly disastrous effects on sales. Instead of sorting the problem out, British Leyland threw in the towel, and within 2 years they'd axed the Stag completely. While the Stag might not be bad enough to belong in the hall of motoring muck-ups like the Edsel and NSU-R080, there's no getting away from the fact that it was Triumph's problem child. But checkered past or not, 20 years down the line, the Stag is now more admired and coveted than ever before. Why is it that the car that was once dubbed the Triumph Snag is now held in such fierce esteem? Why do enthusiasts love it more than Aston Martins and Ferraris?
Still so popular purely because of what it is. The style alone sells the Stag. You've only got to look at it. There's nothing else like a Stag, and it's a four-seater.
But the good news is there's a flourishing owners club and excellent parts availability, right down to replacement body panels. As far as running gear goes, the Stag is better than most, with no serious nasties in the suspension, brakes or steering departments. Many Stags were automatic, and the Borg-Warner box does its job well enough, but it can be quite heavy on the old jungle juice, so it might pay you to go for a manual. But buying a good Stag is by no means easy. There's an awful lot of dross about, like this one, and the really nice cars, the cars that have had some money spent on them, are fetching between £9,000 and £10,000. Now, the Stag is not a rust razor in the accepted sense, but there are certain parts of the bodywork that you've got to have a good, long, hard look at. Check the front valance, especially behind the headlamps and the indicators, and look along the length of both sills and the edge of both wheel arches, a notorious trouble spot. Watch the windscreen pillar and the door post too. And don't forget this water trap where the hardtop sits around the rear bulkhead. But the Stag's most serious Achilles heel has to be the engine.
The engine got a bad name for overheating and cooling system problems. You neglect this cooling system on a Stag at your peril. Major loss of water can cause serious damage to the engine. Once a Stag engine is overheated, it's got to be rebuilt. Timing chains must be replaced, we reckon, between 40,000. They did suffer with crank problems there again when they were in production. An oil change and a filter change every 3,000 miles is essential.
But once you've got yourself behind the wheel, it's easy to see the attraction. The thing people most remember about the Stag are the sound effects, that lovely V8 woof. Music. It's not fast by modern standards. There's a reasonable clip of speed, but it's no road burner. The handling's not the last word either. What you see is what you get. A pretty, period, four-seater convertible that makes you feel, well, special, separate, individual. There are effectively two Stags to choose from. The Mark I, this is the first production car as used in the original brochure, with its Triumph 2500 wheel trims. And then there's the Mark II, with its smart alloys and its full-width stainless steel sill covers. There's very little difference in price between the two, although an original, well-preserved Mark I is more desirable. But perhaps the most interesting thing about the Stag, and one way to explain its enormous popularity, is its image. Ever since the car was conceived, it's always been seen as a teeny bit blousy. A pampered wife's car rather than the real sports car. A bit too soft, a bit too pretty. Dare I say it, a bit hairdressery. But it's exactly this friendly, unintimidating, pretty quality which gives the Stag its appeal. It appeals to people who would rather polish it than drive it seriously, who would rather show it off. The Stag is essentially an embellishment, an adornment, a showpiece, a cherished relic of a happier time. But would I buy one? No. With a very good Stag costing around £10,000, that's an awful lot of money for a motor car with a shadow over its reliability. I couldn't spend my life with one eye looking at the temperature gauge. I couldn't live with the Stag's fragility. Call me Philistine if you will, sensible, boring even, but if I'm signing a Gregory Pack for 10 grand, I want a car that's going to take me from London to Edinburgh with no trouble at all. This 1987 40,000-mile BMW 325i convertible costs exactly the same, £10,000. You pays your money and you takes your choice.
You can go your own way.
With most new vehicle sales figures in the doldrums, the good news from the motor industry is that it's boom time for the off-road market. This year's off-road registrations, at almost 34,000, are a third up compared with 1991. Suzuki should be well pleased. They say they're selling 48% more Vitaras than last year. Land Rover reckon they've found new overseas markets, and most of Vauxhall's new Fronteras are also destined for export.
The Isle of Man is a land of legend for motorcycle enthusiasts. The reason is the 37-mile road racing circuit, which, for sheer diversity, would put most racing tracks to shame. The bikes charge through towns and over the island's bumpy main roads at average speeds of over 120 miles an hour, and up to 190 on the fastest mountain sections. It's dangerous and serious stuff. But the actual races are only part of the proceedings. Although they lost their World Championship status in the 70s, the TT attracts more people than ever. And that's because there's a whole programme of other motorcycling events and activities that have grown up around the circuit. It's a unique 2-week motorcycling extravaganza that brings in enthusiasts from all over the world. It's all go for the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company, with every vessel laden to the gunwales. Over 40,000 bikers make it across each June, this chap clearly sporting the latest in motorcycling accessories. They come from all over Europe and beyond. In fact, it seems as though every man and his dog has arrived on the island. And there are some folk not satisfied with one machine who bring a whole truckful with them. After a long journey, the first port of call is the famous Bushy's pub on Douglas Promenade, and a chance to talk about, you guessed it, motorbikes. Why is it so popular with the German people?
Why? Much fun. Only much fun.
Fun here or up on the mountains?
For all. For this, and the bikes, and the mountain, and the race, and the atmosphere, and the people. That's great.
What do you think of this island?
Excellent. It's the best place in the world where, like, age, there's no matter of age barriers. Everybody gets together and there's no aggravation whatsoever.
How many times have you been?
8 times.
Does it cost a few quid to come here for a week or so?
You could say that, yeah. I could probably get a week off, you know, in Spain or something for what it's cost to come here, but you can't beat the atmosphere.
But it's traditional British seaside landladies for this lot, with every bed and breakfast emporium displaying its no vacancies sign. Everyone's in an exuberant mood. Outside the towns, the island's roads have no speed limit and, traffic permitting, it's the chance to ride in a way you wouldn't be allowed to back home.
The authorities don't just tolerate all these driving high spirits, they actually encourage them. They make the entire mountain section from Ramsey down to Cregnabar a giant one-way system so everyone can go and play at racing. All the spectators, enthusiasts and aficionados get on their bikes and go for it. It's called Match Sunday and it's very aptly named.
I think the head gasket's gone. I'm not sure. I'd say that or a piss.
How far back?
About half a mile.
Oh dear, so what happens now?
I want to lift.
Some four-wheeled motorists try to get in on the act and provide mobile chicanes for the bikers. but it's still all go. Apart, that is, from the odd interruption to the proceedings. So, what do you think of today, then?
Well, I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing.
Have you not been here before,
Never
then?
been before, no.
And are you a motorcycle enthusiast?
I'm working on it.
You don't think these people are a bit crazy, do you?
No, it's all right. Very good.
Hello. What sort of a day are you having?
A very cold one.
Really? It's a lovely day.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Well, you've been on the bike dressed like that?
Yeah, it's very bad, isn't it?
And where are you from?
Australia, Sydney.
You haven't come here especially for this, though, have you?
Yeah.
You're joking?
No, there's 5 of us come over for the TT, you know.
For those who do happen to fall off on the Mad Sunday run, there is some compensation. You can see bikes parked in Douglas with buckets on the handlebars and a plea for support. The money pours in and, amazingly, nobody nicks it. Most of the locals love it, and even the police get in on the action.
The majority of the police enjoy the fortnight. We look forward to the crowd coming, and there's not too many problems, not usually.
And what about the speeds that people do out on the roads and so on?
I won't answer that one.
After a hard day careering around the island, it's time for some Manx nightlife. But even then, you can't seem to get away from bikes. With no engine to assist, the bike balancing competition is quite an art. But there is the odd deviation in the hugely popular Summerland Entertainment Centre. It must be said that biking is not exactly a hotbed of feminism, as displayed by the nightly Miss Wet T-shirt competition. Down the promenade, the awesomely named Globe of Death is pulling in the crowds. This amazing device was constructed 50 years ago and seems to be standing up to its twice nightly hammering. The intrepid Eddie Sloan and Niall O'Connor get up to 50 miles an hour before being joined by their even more intrepid assistant, Pauline Dale, for the act's finale. But bikes don't have to be moving to be of interest. The whole TT fortnight is an informal bike show, and the promenade is chock-a-block with exhibits of one sort or another. It's quite a spectacle, but some of the entries in the actual custom show caused a bit of a giggle this year. This splendid piece of engineering, which looks more like a disaster on wheels to me, is an example of what they call a rat bike. How much work's gone into this?
Well, lots over the years, but it just gets worse and worse.
So it's pretty hard work trying to keep it in this condition, is it?
Well, not really, no. It's left out all the time, and I just use it every day for work and that. Get through the MOT every year, so can't grumble.
George Formby's TT racing film has been shown every year since 1935, and it's still packing them in, even if the Palace complex isn't quite what it used to be. Although the TT races started in 1907, it was in the early post-war years that they really took off. Although the average speeds of around 90 miles an hour may seem slow today, at the time they were on the limit. And they were made of stern stuff to boot. A few minutes later, Mr. Walker was back on his bike, none the worse for wear. But the man the crowds came for, heading for his first TT win in 1950, was Jeff Duke on the North. He went on to take 5 TTs and decided to make the island his home. But he's never lost his respect for the mountain circuit.
I don't think anyone really has ever come to the TT and mastered it completely the first time round. I think you need to come maybe twice or 3 times, and even then you really never stop learning. I think when I was riding I was still learning the very last time I raced here.
And we hear about lining the bike up against post boxes and things like that, is that true?
Yes, that sort of thing does happen. I mean, for instance, at Ginger Hall, on the grass bank on the left-hand side of the apex of the corner, there was a telegraph pole. In fact, I think it's still there now. And if you're using all the road, you used to have to just sort of nod your head a little bit to right to avoid hitting it on the telegraph pole.
Another racer who's settled on the island is Steve Hislop, here on number 19. He was hoping to give Norton their first major win for 20 years. Road racers are a special breed, and nobody knows this circuit better than Steve. What are the tactics required? You know, what makes a great TT rider?
I think it's probably not to panic, just to try and get settled in. and get away off the line clean and take it easy for the first, say, couple of miles, just to settle your nerves, get yourself settled in. Try and get on a nice flow rather than hurry into some of the early corners, because you can really make a mess then, and it just messes up a lap.
One of the veterans of the sport is Ulsterman Joey Dunlop, who was out for his 14th TT win. The bikes start at 10-second intervals, and this Formula One race lasts 6 laps. That's 226 breathtaking miles. Dominating this race from the start was Carl Fogarty from Lancashire. He led until the very last lap when his gearbox bust.
Just went, that was it. It hurts.
Oh, but you felt you were really in control there.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, nothing could stop me. I mean, you're leading by 30 seconds with 1 lap to go. You know, it's in the bag. You just...
Dreadful. How hard were you riding today?
I was riding hard for the first few laps, and once I got the cushion, that was it. I knocked it off, you know.
But at least Fogarty managed to stay on the road. For Steve Hislop, it looked as though a win was possible. On the final lap, he was nibbling away at the lead of number 9, Ulsterman Philip McCallan on a Honda. But in the end, he didn't quite make it, and 28-year-old Philip got his first TT win.
Congratulations, how does that feel?
Really good. I think I'll sleep all right tonight.
You've been waiting for this one?
Well, yes, I've been. This is my 3rd year here, I think, now. So it's paid off.
There's not just one TT. There are 7 races over the fortnight covering different classes of bikes and sidecars too. And they're all dangerous. The event has claimed the lives of 160 racers over the years.
I started my life in motorsport in the passenger seat as a rally co-driver, but I certainly wouldn't like to be in the passenger seat of one of these. What's it like?
It's fun.
Fun?
Yes, it's really funny.
Don't you think it's rather dangerous?
There is a major risk, yes, but as long as you hold tight, I don't think there will be much of a problem.
And of course, you're the passenger for your husband.
Yes, I am.
No arguments ever?
No way.
On this occasion, Mr. Volbrecht nearly left his wife behind. Sidecars usually average under 100 miles an hour, but that can be fast enough. Luckily, no one was seriously injured here. Joey Dunlop won his 14th TT before the end of the fortnight in the 125 race. And it was trophies all round. In the final race, the senior TT, Steve Hislop gave Norton the win they so badly wanted. Not only that, but he clocked up the fastest ever average speed, over 121 miles an hour.
Well, that's that then. Now it's time for me to have a go. But as I can't ride one of these things, I've got the best chauffeur in the business, TT winner Philip McCallan. Are we right?
Hang on, Tony, we're off.
Next week, how do advanced petrol cars stack up against the best diesels? Jeremy Clarkson meets some vehicles his own size. And Britain's old king of rallying battles against the young pretender. For more on